not to put her in like a look. She should be held to a higher standard because she's a national political reporter. But the truth is, most people are not super familiar with their legislature, and that's just the way it is, right? I mean, it's we have a civics system, education system that does not really give us a lot of tools to understand where a lot of power does lie. I think there's a general, conception that power is in Washington, and that's kind of it. Or maybe your mayor has some power. But the truth is, our state legislatures have a huge amount of power, and it's not just them. There are these other statewide offices, constitutional offices, that people know very little about.
This is Walking Each Other Home, and today we're going to be having an interview with the founder of statefutures.org, one of my best friends, Gaby Goldstein. Gaby's organization is unusually strategic, which is par for the course for Gaby. She's generally 5 to 10 years ahead of the rest of us. But today she's training legislators how to be the kind of legislators that can resist an authoritarian regime, for example, the Trump administration. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Let's get this directly from Gaby.
Oh, Matt, it is such a joy to be together in virtual space and physical space. Anytime I can share space with you is truly a joy. You are a treasure. So it is a delight to be here. And yes, so I'm Gaby Goldstein. I am president of an organization called State Futures, which works to build and wield progressive power in states, particularly through mobilizing and organizing state policymakers, state legislators, secretaries of state, state financial officers. These folks have a tremendous amount of power and influence, but they historically haven't gotten a lot of love and attention from our side of the aisle, at least. Certainly the right has been very masterful at using and leveraging state-level power for, frankly, regressive goals for a very long time. So we are coming from behind, but we're coming fast. And certainly right now in this very precarious moment for our democracy and our country, where we're seeing federal protections and programs dismantled and illegally withheld. Right now, we're in the midst of a snap, and really an illegal snap withholding. It's more important than ever for folks to understand how important their state leaders are and the tremendous amount of power that states have, and to really get involved in supporting these folks and helping us all fight back, and importantly, fight forward for the future that we all want.
One of the things that when I first was learning about the work and how the cohort of legislators were emerging and beginning to pool that training skill, so where you were bringing that kind of wisdom, or were you coordinating them so that it was going to be more and more effective, that was one of the most uplifting things I had heard for months at that time, because it seems so smart. It seems such an intelligent way of responding to a crisis that history has responded to before. And so I'm curious, how did the legislators react to that kind of a strategy?
Yeah, I mean, so I approach this work really as an organizer, which is funny to say because I'm a lawyer too, right, Matt? Matt and I know each other from law school, if you can believe it. Was it 19 years ago that we graduated? Can you believe it? It's going to be 20.
There are no records or survivors.
There are certainly no survivors, I can tell you that. It will be 20 next year. I'm angling for a silver shingle. Please nominate me. If you're listening, please nominate me. Shameless self-promotion there. No, I'm kidding. But I fell backwards into this work. I'm a healthcare regulatory lawyer by training and by practice. I practiced for about a decade in San Francisco in big law, and was finishing my PhD in health policy when the 2016 election happened, and fell backwards into organizing and into state level politics and policy when I co-founded an organization called Systems, sister district, which builds progressive power in state legislatures through elections by helping elect great folks to state houses all over the country, and came back and really spent the better part of the last decade as an organizer, helping folks get elected, and working with volunteers and activists to get and the public to get folks to care at all about states and state legislatures, and came back around to the policy side a few years ago, starting to build official side, meaning policy side programs for all the folks who we'd helped elect on the campaign side, because as it turns out, all of the gaps in infrastructure and support for folks running for office at the state ledge level don't go away once folks are elected. It's actually just as bad. But now there's the added pressure of, needing to have an agenda and actually, pass bills. So that programming kind of outgrew what it made sense to house its sister district for a variety of reasons. And so we, with all the love and care in the world, we spun off in March of this year into our new organization, State Futures, so that this work could really have its own institutional home. And to your question, the response has been very quick and I would say decisive. We were about 95 state legislators in March when we separated, and now we're at over 600 state legislators and state financial officers who are part of our network. And that's almost all been organic growth, folks just inviting their colleagues to our events and sharing our newsletter around, and doing a little what we call an organizing barnstorming, just getting folks to sign up for the next thing while they're at the current thing and all the rest. And so it's been really rewarding to see the enthusiasm from the state policymakers. I mean, look, they're under a lot of pressure, right? I mean, these folks are under a huge amount of pressure. These are folks who are often in the legislature working part-time. Folks don't always realize this. Paid very little, if at all. And for instance, in New Mexico, state legislators are not paid at all, totally volunteer. I think in New Hampshire, they're paid like $100 a year or something. I mean, it's really, this is a labor of love for folks who do this work, but they're under tremendous pressure, especially right now, as we see, of course, the huge negative impacts of federal policy on people and states. And so they're really eager to connect and meet each other, learn from one another. That's really what we do at State Futures. We do three things. First, we serve as conveners for cross-state peer learning. We break down the silos between states so that folks can meet each other, know each other, develop trust, and move policy among peers. Second, we serve as a hub of state policy expertise and thought leadership, really translating the great policy ideas from think tanks into like actual tools that people could use, and engaging with the public to help mobilize people and educate them about the importance of states and state policy. And then the third is that we serve as connective tissue for multi-state action. So this is really where I think the power in our network lies, is that we help state policymakers work together across states to pool their power, to pool their resources, and really have that bigger impact that collective action can bring. So happy to dig in more, any direction there, but really the goal here is, in this very fraught moment, to create community really between values aligned state policymakers, meaning policymakers who share our collective values on this call, at least, right? And make sure that they have the resources and the community that they need to lead effectively in this moment, and to pool power across states so that it's not just what California is doing or Massachusetts or whatever, but that it's a collective voice where we're fighting back against fascism, and also, really importantly, fighting forward for the future that we all want to have.
Okay, so I do want to drill in on a couple of things there. And the first one is just to say, I don't know how to express my thanks on this one. The feeling of just sort of treading in not even water, in atmosphere, and nothing moved, nothing helped, nothing seemed like it changed, just because they felt like it was all falling apart. There was nothing I could trust. The world had become a twilight of dishonesty, and it felt like there was no one to ask for help. But then getting to describe to them, well, here's a strategy, here's a process, and here's where it goes, and here's where we can be involved. So many light bulbs went off. I see how I could be part of this. That was just overwhelmingly the response I got. And it was from being able to tell them that this training of new legislators, of course, they're not ready for that job, but we can prepare them. We can point to history that this is what states do. And we can also show you how you be part of that legislator's journey in a way that made sense. I'm so immensely thankful.
Well, the twilight of dishonesty is upon us, my friend. But
Yes.
What a turn of phrase! What a poet! But yes, I mean, I think that listen, I grew up in California, and I didn't learn very much about our legislature in California. I'll tell you, this is a true story. When we started Sister District, and my co-founders and I started to take press calls with national press. This call from an outlet that no longer exists, but was very large and starts with a V, if anybody can recall. National reporter covering national news. Never forget this call. We got on the phone with her, and we were explaining what we do. Oh, we're Sister District. We're trying to elect great Democrats to state legislatures. And she was like, oh, state legislatures? Is that like Congress? And we were like, well, kind of. Every state has one. And she was like, oh, like every state has like their own Congress. And we were like, oh my God, you are a national politics reporter, and you are unfamiliar with the general concept of states having their own legislatures. So I tell that story because not to put her in like a look. She should be held to a higher standard because she's a national political reporter. But the truth is, most people are not super familiar with their legislature, and that's just the way it is, right? I mean, we have a civics education system that does not really give us a lot of tools to understand where a lot of power does lie. I think there's a general conception that power is in Washington, and that's kind of it, or maybe your mayor has some power, but the truth is our state legislatures have a huge amount of power, and it's not just them. There are these other statewide offices, constitutional offices, that people know very little about. Very, very little. I won't put you on the spot, but thumbs up, thumbs down if you know who your state treasurer is in Massachusetts.
No,
right.
not right now.
So we work with legislators, but we also work with these other statewide offices, particularly state financial officers. And these are folks who have a huge amount of power. They control trillions of dollars with a T, trillions of dollars worth of public assets through public pensions and other public investments. And most folks have no idea who their state treasurer is, or their state comptroller or controller. But there's a tremendous opportunity to encourage these folks in particular to, let's say, align public investments with our shared values. I think it might surprise people to know that a lot of very, very blue states, and I won't call them out, have billions of dollars invested in Tesla, in private prisons, in all kinds of what we would consider industries that are not aligned with our values. But that's in part because the work that our financial officers do is pretty much off the radar. No one even knows who they are. So I say that all to say that there's so much power at the state level, and it's really a challenge, but really something we need to do to help people understand what folks do at the state level and how it impacts all of us. And certainly right now, when we see what's happening with ICE and immigration and rule of law. I mean, all of this is playing out at the state level, right? Our Democratic AGs are doing a bang-up job of bringing cases nonstop, and certainly, Andrea Campbell in Massachusetts is one of the best. But truly, it's not just the AGs. Legislators are the ones who make laws, right? And so that's kind of a basic, but it's an oldie but a goodie. And so if you want your state to be like my state in California and pass a law prohibiting ICE and other law enforcement from wearing masks, you got to work with your legislature. I mean, California is currently the only state in the country to have enacted, meaning passed and the governor signed, the no secret police bills, right? So there's a lot of work to be done, and all that has to be done at the state level. So tons and tons of reasons to get involved, and also tons of real impact that you can see right away, particularly right now when we're seeing our communities literally being attacked on the streets. It's your state legislators and your state financial officers and your state AGs who really have the power to make our lives better and get us through this.
And I had to just look up my treasurer because, I could tell you my secretary, I could tell you my governor, I could tell you a lot of specific officers. I couldn't have told you the treasury.
Deb Goldberg, yep.
Yeah. So I owe her an apology because that's a real job.
That is a real job, and these folks, need support. These are campaigns, and I don't work on the campaign side, but certainly these are certainly on the campaign side. But also, once they're elected, these folks need to know people are watching. What they do, what they invest in, and that we support them when they do the right thing. For folks listening, on I believe it's November 6th, Tesla is having its annual shareholder meeting where the $1 trillion pay package, trillion with a T, Elon Musk is being considered by shareholders. Take a look at what your state financial officers and what your state investment officers, whether they've taken a position, whether they're voting yes or no, because states are big shareholders in Tesla stock. So this is a real opportunity to not just hold people accountable, but celebrate the financial officers who are doing a good job. Huge shout out to Brooke Learman, the comptroller in Maryland. Huge shout out to Laura Montoya, the treasurer in New Mexico. I could tell you so many more, but these are folks in particular who have been very vocal about voting no on the $1 trillion pay package for Elon Musk as being a bad business decision, bad investment decision. And so again, we have an obligation, but also the opportunity to be involved in where our states are putting their dollars, our dollars. These are our dollars. These are our dollars, and supporting our financial officers when they make good decisions that align with our values.
Agreed. And you were the one that introduced me to Lehrman because I was in that meeting. Comptroller Lehrman is a really, really bright star.
Truly.
Well, I have a question about that then, because part of the discussion about community, and especially how people find themselves in this race and how they can be part of it, what I would be curious about is if you favor specific ways of thinking about the moment, because I've talked with partially with my audience, also with some work outside. We've been talking about this idea of let's treat this as a time where the pendulum is being reset and it's showing us a problem that we will resolve now, as opposed to it's just bad, it's the decline, it's the demise, it's the end, it's wherever Peter Thiel thinks we're going. I don't want that to be there, but up until I had something like state futures to point to, it was harder for me to show some of my neighbors that there was momentum that was worth getting involved in, that they could believe in. And being able to stack this with their growing knowledge of American history, suddenly everybody's watching miniseries and picking up a lot of podcasts about American civil liberties. They're beginning to see this kind of a movement. How do you talk to people about it? Because I think you talk to a different audience than I do.
Here's what I always say about political engagement is a couple things. First, it's not zero sum. A little goes a really long way, especially down ballot. When you're talking about like a, Senate race or the presidential race, you're probably never gonna. What's your $20? Look, Nancy Pelosi can hit me up for $3 until the cows come home, and she does. Okay, and she will. But small dollar contributions like that really make a huge difference the farther down the ballot you go. There's a huge amount of we're coming at this really far behind. Let me just share that the on the right, they have been really, really organized and mobilized around down ballot, state level, state ledge, state financial officer races for generations. I mean, the idea of state level power is literally baked into conservative ideology. You can think of it as states' rights. This goes back to the founding of the country, the separation of power between states and the federal government. And generally speaking, people who believe in, what we consider to be modern civil rights, women are people, Black people are people, these sorts of shared values typically have, going back to the beginnings of the country, been more aligned with a stronger federal government. And those who don't tend to agree with those values have been more aligned with states having more rights. So here we are 250 years later, it's the same thing. And that's a huge problem for us now on the left, because we are in an era now of declining federal protective power, right? Look at the Supreme Court continually eroding federal civil rights protections and protective regulations. And that means states are more and more important when it comes to everything from abortion access to whether there's fluoride in your kids' water to make sure they don't get cavities. This is all controlled by states now. And the fact that we don't have such good infrastructure on our side is now a really big problem, because we have relied for generations in a functional federal government that will provide some basic floor for us, and that floor has been taken away. So meanwhile, the right is like marching ahead. They have really tight infrastructure, very well resourced, and all the rest. It's not a twilight of the. We're not in the twilight though, although it feels like we're in the twilight zone. There's plenty to look at that is quite positive on our side. I was at this, when I was still at Sister District after the election last year, which of course was disappointing for all of us in many ways. Although we did okay at the state ledge level, we did much better than expected. Although that you'd never know that from like national news. Right. But I helped convene this meeting for organizations that worked on state ledge elections, and we were sitting around this big room in DC, and at the end of the day we all went around and the sort of like closing exercise was for everyone to go around and say one thing that was going to stay with them from this meeting. And it got to me, and I looked around the room and I said, how many folks in this room are from organizations that did not exist until 2017? And almost all of the hands went up in the room, including mine, right? Including mine. And I looked around and I said, you know what? This is great. This is progress. We couldn't have had this meeting in 2016. We couldn't have filled a closet, much less this huge conference room at the AFL-CIO in downtown DC. So we are getting better. We are getting better here. We are building infrastructure. We have binders full of, no, I'm kidding. But we've got conference rooms full of organizers. So that's really good. And so, I say that to say we're still far behind. We've got plenty of distance to go, but we are building the infrastructure, and our state leaders are really hungry for it, right? I mentioned at the beginning the massive growth in our network this year, and it's not slowing down. I thought, it would just be like a bunch of people would join early on and then it would kind of peter out. But no, we've started. My hope for this year was that we could start 2, maybe 3 working groups of legislators or policymakers, and we have 4. going, and now, and it's just November. So there's been tremendous interest, and when I say interest, I mean there's been tremendous interest from state policymakers to have the kind of community and resources and support that we're building. And like I always say, it's an honor and a privilege to be useful in this moment. And it's the least that I can do to give back to and support these folks who are literally putting their bodies on the line. I don't know if you've seen, we had 11 state legislators in New York get arrested at at the federal building in downtown New York. There's state legislators in Illinois have been. There's these, wild viral videos of them running up and down the street, shouting for their neighbors to stay inside, don't open the door, shouting in English and Spanish as ICE is like roaming the neighborhood and stuff. These are people who are really putting their bodies on the line, and so I feel really honored to be able to do what I can to support them, and we can all be involved in that.
I've definitely taken a similar example to heart, because it doesn't land for you until you do see ICE. I've got 3 primary goals that are relevant to this that I want to talk about with my audience. One of them is there is the staunch the bleeding, curtail the autocrat, and these are separate. And then there's the building the future that is aligned with the communities.
2 ways to be involved, and they're connected. I'm here only in one capacity, but I want to mention that there's 2 ways to get involved. There's to help people when they're running for office, running for election or re-election, if they're running for re-election. And then the other is to help them, once they're in office, feel supported to make the right decisions and make the right choices. When they're voting on bills, when they're introducing bills. So there's the campaign work, and then there's what we call the accountability work, and that's holding people accountable once they're elected. And there's a role for everybody in both of those pieces. Like I said, on the campaign side, a little goes a really long way at the state ledge or state financial officer level. These races are much, much smaller in terms of the money that they have to raise. I mean, it's still a lot of money, especially in some states like Virginia. These are still, multi-million-dollar races. But in other states, they're not. I mean, if you're in Pennsylvania, your state house rep is maybe going to raise $100,000 or $200,000. Your $20 really matters when you're dealing with that kind of those kinds of budgets. Canvassing, taking, phone banking, writing a few postcards, those things really matter. My God, if I had a dollar for every door I've knocked with Sister District to help get folks elected, where the person that answers the door says, "Oh, you're bad candidate," or "You're with Sister District," or I got a postcard from a volunteer, and then they go to their fridge and they get the postcard written by the volunteer off of the fridge and bring it to the door to show me. If I had a dollar, I could not buy a yacht, but I could probably buy a round of ice creams for like a big elementary school group. So I say that to say it really does make a difference, and a little goes a long way with your time and your treasure, with your time and your money. And similarly, on the accountability side, most of the time, if anybody, these electeds, if they hear from constituents, it's almost always for something bad. It's almost always that they voted the wrong way, or that they, or for something they need, right? Like the pothole in front of my house or whatever. It makes a huge difference, though, for them to hear from a constituent when they voted the right way. Like, thank you for voting for that, equal protection measure that's going through the House. Thank you for voting to appropriate the money for free lunch. My kid is a beneficiary there, or like my neighbors need this money. Thank you. Because that positive reinforcement, we know this, right? Who's got kids out there? Like the positive reinforcement is frankly even better than the negative reinforcement, although that's, but I say that to say that like paying a little bit of attention to what your legislator is doing. And look, if you don't have a good legislator, then it's definitely time for accountability, right? Like, why did you vote this way? This is not what your constituents want. Why can't you introduce that measure? Why can't you do this? Holding them accountable, and also then thanking them for voting the right way and for ways that align with our values. Both are really important tools. Before all of that, just find out who they are, right? Matt learned something on this call. Matt learned who Deb Goldberg is.
Who's going to get a gift basket?
Yeah, you just get her. Yeah, right. Like, but seriously, everybody, a little bit of homework, 5 minutes. It'll take you 5 minutes. Find out who your state rep is, your state senator, and your state financial officer. Just that's it. Just even learn their names. If you learn their names, then maybe you'll start to recognize their names in, news articles or in the paper or in conversation in community, and just get a little bit educated. Maybe go to their website and see what are their big issues. Do you like it? Do you like what they're running on and what they're doing in office? If not, maybe it's time to pay attention to who's going to be running next time around, and maybe think about getting involved. Or maybe you do like it. You're like, wow, I'm super glad this person is voting this way and cares about the environment, cares about abortion access, whatever it is. I'm going to drop them a line and say, thank you. I just read on your website that these are the issues you care about. I didn't know that I was your constituent. Thank you. Thank you for caring about these issues. I'm going to do my best to pay attention. Sign up for their newsletters. They all have newsletters. Send it to your spam account or whatever it is. Read it from time to time. Just get a little bit involved. Like, just get in the flow of information about what these folks are doing and see if you like it or not. And if you do, say thanks. And if you don't, time to get involved on the other side. I think the thing is to recognize that you have to meet, this is like an organizer adage, you have to meet people where they are, right? Not everybody knows a lot about state politics and state stuff. That's okay. We all got to start somewhere, right? And knowing a little bit is better than knowing less, right? So I think what we all need to do around so much of everything, whether it's learning about state politics or learning about, what it's like to be trans, or learning, why it matters to, believe that women are people, right? Like, whatever it is, big or small, we have to create an inviting conversation. We have to invite people in to a place where they can have a conversation and have an on-ramp to that conversation. And so, I think that that's really hard work. And it's not for everyone. And frankly, it's not for me a lot of the time. But it is in certain contexts, and one context that it is for me is around getting folks to understand a little bit about states and how important states are and all the rest. And so I think just taking it small, one step at a time, one little step. Hey, it's huge. If everyone in this country knew who one of their state legislators were, it would be insanely amazing. I mean, I've done surveys on this, national polls, very, very low information, right? Like, people do not know, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to start there, but let's see if we can have a conversation to bring people along. And I think in particular, there's just such a huge opportunity right now because everyone can see the negative impacts of federal policy on their lives and on their communities and on their friends and families. And that is an invitation, I think, to learn about states. And the on-ramp is look at what's happening at the federal level. Look at look at the terrible problems that are being generated by this federal administration. And then let's look at what states can do and what states are doing to make people's lives better. So that's what I would say is baby steps. I don't know. There's a singer called Olivia Dean. I don't know Olivia Dean. Do you know Olivia Dean? I don't know.
I've heard her name before.
but my little child knows a song of hers, which I don't know how it goes, but he sings it. It's like left, right, babies. So we say it all the time because, again, never heard the song, but he sings it all the time. Baby steps. Some of this stuff is really about having being willing to have take baby steps with your neighbors and your friends and your families, to just expand their imagination a little bit about what they can be asking for from government, and who they should be asking that from, and that it's not just Chuck Schumer and whatever he tweeted about the cost of tomatoes in Mexico today, but it's about the people who are more local to you, and the huge power that they have over the conditions of your life.
Excellent. Well, I think I only want to ask you one because we're so close to end of time, but I do have one more, and it's not a hard one, I hope. What's giving you life today? Like, if there's one thing that it doesn't have to be about anything we've talked about, but is there something that makes you smile at a time when I know you've been doing the kind of work that smiling could have been really difficult, but is there something that you looked at, you smiled, and you thought, I'm at a place where I can smile about that?
Well, I wouldn't say, I mean, this is sure. Yes. I mean, look, cats, baby, the occasional ray of sunlight this time of year, all of those things. But I will just say this as well, which is, I don't know when this is going to air, but tomorrow is a really important set of elections in Virginia, in New Jersey, and in New York. And I have a really, I'm not a betting type, but I have a really good feeling about how, at least some of those races are going to go. And I think the odd year elections, the elections before a midterm, are often a bellwether for how folks are feeling about federal policies and everything else. And so I think it'll be really interesting, and I'm really encouraged about what I hope will come out of that. And huge shout out to Zoran Mamdani, who is killing it on social media. I mean, he's really hilarious. He's authentic. He's all of those sorts of things. And I'll tell you, his ads have made me smile. I'm smiling every time I see one, because his smile is so infectious. And I don't know that he'll get everything accomplished that he wants to do, but I know he's going to try his hardest to do it. And that makes me smile.
Yeah. Also, his hardest seems like it's a skillful hardest.
Totally.
Oh, thank you so much for all this. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, it's a joy to see you, and thank you for all you're doing, Matt.
Yeah. Well, let's talk again soon.